Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. We are doing this by going through the New Testament gospel messages chronologically in order, and so we're looking at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And today we're looking at Jesus restoring sight to a blind man. Yesterday we looked at Jesus warning about looking at wrong teaching, and today, as he's going through to a different town, he comes across a guy who is blind. And so what we see here is Jesus restoring sight to a blind man. And so when they arrived here, this is Mark 8. This is only recorded in Mark 8 verse 22 through 26. When they arrived, some people brought a blind man to Jesus and they begged him to touch the man and heal him because they'd seen him do that before. People knew he'd just touch him. But Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. So he did something different here. And again, we're not 100% sure why, but we just see that this is what he did. Then, spitting on the man's eyes, he laid his hands on him and asked him, "Can you see anything?" Now this is again a different. We saw this with the guy who is deaf and mute, right? Where Jesus, used spit for putting his in the guy's ear with his finger and touching on his tongue. And so I don't know the point or the reason why he would do this, because honestly, in some of this society, this would be considered unclean. And so I don't know. We don't know 100%. It doesn't really go into detail, but it is interesting that he kind of changed up his method a little bit on in healing this guy. So he asked him, "Can you heal it? See anything?" Now the man looked. Yes, he said, I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking around." And so then Jesus places his hands on the man's eyes again, and his eyes were open. His sight was completely restored, and he could see everything clearly. Jesus sent him away, saying, "Don't go back into the village on your way home." And so, why did we see this happen, and this whole process happen? And it's an interesting thing. Jesus chose not to just lay his hands on the man and heal him. And so he took him aside and took him out of town. And I think the part of the reason why he took him to the edge of town is to get away from the mob scene and the publicity that would come from this. But it's interesting that he chooses a different way of healing this man instead of just touching him and or saying, "Be you're healed," just laying hands on him and be healed. So the other thing we see is, like I just mentioned, we see where he spits on this man's eyes, which is another interesting thing that he would do sometimes. But then he had to touch the guy a second time. So the first time we see, the man looked around, he could see, but he couldn't see 100%. And this is the only miracle in which the healing wasn't immediate and complete. But we don't know why. We don't get a true answer as why. So Jesus has to touch him a second time. And so here's the thing. We know that the miracles, like, we know they're not too difficult for Jesus. We know that, he could have just snapped his fingers and he would have been able to see. So obviously he is doing this for a reason. And some scholars think, well, he was choosing to do it in stages, right? Possibly to show the disciples that some healing would be gradual rather than instantaneous, or maybe to demonstrate that spiritual truth is not always perceived clearly at first. And so there's kind of a mixture of ideas. Honestly, we really don't know. And when we see this message, we see these 4, 5, 6 verses, and we don't know. We just really don't know. And again, this is one of those times where I think we as Christians, and we have the opportunity to admit we really don't know. We have some thoughts, we have some guesses as to why Jesus did this, why it took him multiple times, why he took him to the edge, why he, all these things, why he didn't just heal like he did a lot of people. And so, but like always, and or not always, like in many cases, when Jesus heals someone, he asks them to keep it secret. He's like, "Keep it secret. Don't go back into the town." And so he led him out of town, right? And more than likely, this was to avoid publicity and the mob scene that would otherwise result, right? The people just saw these things and they would mob him and continue to mob him. So the other thing here, though, it looks like, at least according to Mark, unlike in the past, this person seemed to obey him. He seemed to follow the instructions that we see. And so again, it's a short, interesting story. We don't fully understand why it took Jesus multiple times to heal this guy. Because every other thing we see, every other healing, every other miracle, it's instantaneous. It's just as soon as he says it, it's done. And so we're not 100% sure why why this took so long, or why it took 2 times instead of just one, or saying it or touch him and be done. So it's just a really interesting story. And I don't know, maybe we can come up with multiple meanings behind why, right? Multiple meanings behind why it's that way. But in the end, we just truly don't know. But we do see that God is in Jesus, or Jesus as God is able to heal people when he wants to, and he can heal them however he wants to, and he uses different methods to heal people. So again, this is a short one, only 5 minutes, not a real long, not a ton to take out of this story, and that's how some of these little sections are. I appreciate everyone who continues to watch the videos, or does watch the videos. If you find it helpful, find it useful, please share them with others so they can, it can help them as well. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do so. We're going to continue to put out different studies like this. We're going to continue this study all the way through the end of the Gospels, up and through the resurrection, and we'll keep on. We're going to have some other messages, some deeper dives, and some other things that we're going to do. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching.